Think logically, there's no money to lend to a low-tier farmer. When I went to consult about a loan, the banker Joseph said this with a satisfied grin. It seemed pointless to say anything more to this man. With a sigh in my heart, I told him what I had been thinking. All right, then I'll stop leasing the land. Joseph was dumbfounded for a moment, then burst out laughing. You, a poor guy, leasing land to a bank? What are you talking about? Joseph was laughing uproariously, but he had no idea that in a few minutes he would be pale and trembling. My name is Daniel Williams. I'm a 51-year-old farmer in my hometown. In my younger days, I worked at a famous restaurant chain in New York City. But when my grandparents fell ill, I quit my job and returned to my hometown. For over 20 years now, I've been growing vegetables at my own pace, taking over my grandparents' farm. Some might wonder why I, the grandson, took over the farm instead of my parents. The answer is simple. I don't have parents, originally. I lived with my parents in another state, but my father disappeared when I was in elementary school. He left without a note. My mom and I couldn't make a living by ourselves, so we relied on my grandparents' home. After that, my mom went out to work, and I was taken care of by my grandparents, who were farmers. However, those peaceful days were soon hit by tragedy again. When I was 10, I got the news that my mom, who was working in the city, had died in a car accident. From then on, my grandparents officially took me in, and the three of us lived together. I felt guilty about being a burden to my grandparents, even as a child, and asked to help with the farming as much as possible. What are you saying? You're still a child. Children should just play and be kids. But I want to help you, Grandpa and Grandma. Plus, I'm interested in growing vegetables. After repeatedly asking, my grandparents reluctantly agreed to let me help. Every day, they happily taught me how to grow vegetables. The thing that made them happiest wasn't that I wanted to help, but that I was interested in vegetables. They would smile every day as they let me ride the farm tractor. Many kids hate vegetables, but you eat everything happily. And now you're even interested in growing them. What a wonderful grandson we have. Their faces, tanned and deeply lined from working under the blue sky every day. Their faces, weathered by decades of rain and wind, wrinkled into smiles as they patted my head, filling my heart with warmth. They always took care of me, providing warm meals and a soft bed every day. But I knew that after I went to sleep, they cried in front of my mom's photo, their only precious daughter. I still remember that scene vividly. One night, I got up to use the bathroom and saw light coming from the room with the altar. Peeking through the sliding door, I saw my grandmother, who was always cheerful during the day, breaking down in tears in front of my mom's photo. My grandfather, sitting next to her, supported her frail body and repeatedly said, "Let's raise him well in place of our daughter." That was the first time I realized that my grandparents were also deeply grieving. From then on, I tried my best to brighten their spirits, hoping to fill the void left by my mom. Helping with the farming was part of that plan. And I also tried to keep the house filled with laughter by saying funny things every day. Maybe because of that, the nights I heard crying from the altar room gradually decreased, and we slowly built a peaceful life together. By the time I was in high school, my grandparents' health started to decline, and they couldn't farm on the same scale as before. So, we began leasing the land, drastically reducing our harvest. They grew cabbage, which required a lot of space but was easy to manage, and cherry tomatoes, which produced a lot on small plots. This much we can handle ourselves, so don't worry about us. Leave this rural area and pursue the career you love, they said. But I plan to go into farming after high school. I tried my best to convince my grandparents, wanting to repay their kindness. However, both of them shook their heads and encouraged me to pursue higher education and a different career. I talked to your teacher and he said you're very smart. The future of farming will be tough with cheap foreign vegetables flooding the market. That's why I want to help with the farming and make things easier for you, Grandpa and Grandma." Unexpectedly, it was my grandmother who looked stern. What kind of grandparents would want to make life easier at the expense of their grandchild's future? "We want nothing more than for you to have a happy life." I appreciated her feelings, but I still couldn't bring myself to leave home. While I was worried about my grandparents, I was also scared of living alone. Sensing my unease, my grandfather's expression softened. "Take a break from farming and find what you truly want to do. Study hard in the city, and if you still want to farm, come back here. Then, you can bring the advanced farming techniques of your time back with you." Okay, I understand. Eventually, I started studying for college entrance exams and got into a prestigious university in the state. There, I enrolled in the engineering department to study computer software. Although I had been focused on farming since childhood, I became fascinated with computers after using one at a friend's house during high school. That's why, when I thought of something other than farming, computer software was the first thing that came to mind. Later, I got a job as a programmer at a major company in New York City. I worked tirelessly from morning till night on the latest computer technologies and configurations, which were still rare back then. The new life and fulfilling work made the years fly by, and before I knew it, 10 years had passed. I used to visit my grandparents' house during summer and winter holidays, but as work got busier, my visits became less frequent. Even though I told my grandparents to take care of their health, I didn't truly understand their condition. I came to realize my foolishness by yet another phone call. The early morning ring brought back memories of the call about my mom's death. With a cold sweat on my forehead and trembling fingers, I picked up the phone to hear my grandmother sobbing. Grandpa has collapsed." I hurriedly returned to my hometown and rushed to the hospital my grandmother mentioned. Apparently, he had worked too hard in the rain and was taken to the hospital on the verge of pneumonia. Although they said his life wasn't in danger, seeing my grandfather lying in the hospital bed, looking as thin as a withered tree, made my heart ache. "Grandpa, how did you end up like this?" "I'm sorry for calling so early in the morning. I was so shocked." Seeing Grandma apologizing repeatedly while sitting by Grandpa's bed, I noticed her back was already hunched over. When did my grandparents become so frail? Why had I been living my life, forgetting about my hometown? I was stunned and decided on that very day to return home. Grandparents tried to stop me again, but I insisted, "This is my life. Let me live it the way I want. If I don't come back now, I'll regret it forever." Not wanting to leave the company in a bind, I informed them of my resignation and started the handover process. My boss, Tom, who had taken care of me since I joined, tried to persuade me to stay. But when he saw how determined I was, Tom smiled and said, "Daniel, your innovative ideas have been a great motivation for the other employees. It will be sad to see you go. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to contact me." While I thought his praise was excessive, I was genuinely touched by his words. Thus, I ended my corporate life and returned to my hometown. In the end, my grandparents were happy and enjoyed living with me again after more than 10 years. When I went out to the fields, they were significantly smaller compared to when I was in high school. Most of the unused land had been leased out, but there were still large areas covered with weeds. Seeing the ample land, my eyes lit up. I had a plan that had been brewing since my days working in the city. "Grandpa, can I grow something I like here?" "Do whatever you want. We're planning to leave all the farming to you in the future, so try out your ideas." So, I started growing something different. It was herbs, which were completely overlooked in the local area. Nowadays, you can easily buy them at any supermarket, but back then, herbs were still a novel ingredient. I saw great potential in herbs, not just for cooking, but also for their aroma and other uses. Fortunately, my grandfather had an old setup for growing cherry tomatoes indoors, so I used it to nurture seedlings. I focused on mass-producing herbs mainly for restaurants and persuaded local supermarkets to give me shelf space. Luckily, herbs started booming, and my herb farm took off better than I expected. Within a few years, herb sales surpassed my grandparents' vegetable sales. My grandparents, now quite old, saw this as a perfect opportunity to hand over the entire operation to me. My herb farm gained a good reputation locally, and neighbors would often compliment my grandparents, making them smile proudly. Soon, people started asking to buy herbs for their home gardens and requested bouquets of herb flowers, turning my farm into a local favorite. The vegetables we grew filled everyone's stomachs, but the herbs you grow satisfy their hearts too. When Grandma said this, I felt quite embarrassed. But just when I thought I had finally repaid my grandparents, they both passed away in quick succession. We're so proud of how you've grown. We're happy to have a grandson who makes others smile with his work. Left alone, I felt a deep loneliness, but also etched their words into my heart. I am where I am today because I continued their farming legacy. From now on, I aim to expand this farm further. With this in mind, I decided to seek a loan from the bank to expand my business. Thank you for seeing me today. I visited a local bank. The man in charge of the loan, Joseph, had a friendly smile. Taking over my grandparents' farm, I wanted to expand it further, requiring a significant amount of funds. So I planned to ask the bank for a loan. There's no need to be so nervous, please relax. Thank you. I was introduced by an acquaintance, and I'm relieved to see you seem kind. When I inadvertently revealed my true feelings, Joseph burst out laughing. We then moved to small talk, but Joseph would not start asking about my business plan. If this continued, it would just be a waste of time. Thinking so, I decided to cut the conversation short and brought out the plan I had prepared. This is my business plan. Let me explain it to you first. No, there's no need. There's nothing worth discussing. I started to explain the purpose of my business, but Joseph snorted derisively and cut me off. I felt uneasy and nervously asked, "Does that mean this meeting is just an introduction?" "No, it means we won't be giving you a loan. There's no point in discussing it further." He said this with a disdainful look. Honestly, discussing an important loan in dirty work clothes doesn't show any seriousness. "And that truck you drove here, that's yours, right?" Joseph pointed out the window towards the parking lot. Sure enough, my small truck was parked there, the one I rushed to the bank in. There's no way we can lend money to someone driving a vehicle like that. I apologized for my attire. An urgent task came up, and I came straight from the field. I had planned to wear a suit for the loan request. But an hour before our appointment, I received a call to inspect the current state of my herb farm, so I was giving a tour until just before. That left me no time to change, so I decided it was better to arrive in my work clothes and truck than to be late. All of this was to present this business plan and secure a loan from the bank. I desperately tried to get Joseph to listen, bringing out the plan once more. "If you understand the plan, you'll see its potential. I've been developing this for years, please. Just take a look." "Enough. You're persistent." To my disbelief, Joseph roughly shook off my arm. He then snatched the plan from my hands, tore it to pieces, and threw it in the trash. Stunned, I could only stare in shock at the shredded remains of my plan. Joseph laughed smugly and said, "Think logically. Banks only lend to customers who can repay. There's no money for a low-tier farmer like you." It was clear that no matter what I said, it would be pointless. With a sigh in my heart, I told him what I had been thinking. "All right, then I'll stop leasing the land." Joseph looked dumbfounded for a moment, then started laughing out loud. "Leasing land? What are you talking about? We don't need to lease land from a poor farmer with no money. You'd make a better comedian than a farmer." Still laughing loudly, Joseph opened the door wide and said, "Thanks for coming today. This way out, please," signaling for me to leave. I returned to the parking lot, confused. The loan discussion had been arranged through an acquaintance who had evaluated my business plan and had connections with the bank. Trusting his words, I attended today's meeting, but it seemed Joseph didn't know I had come through an introduction. I sat back in my seat, sighed deeply, and decided to call my acquaintance. After 3 rings, the call connected. That was fast. Is the meeting already over? Did you get the full loan? The cheerful voice belonged to my former boss, Tom, who is now an executive with extensive connections. Tom had suggested I try for a loan at the local bank, assuring me he'd set things up. Unable to hide my confusion, I explained what had happened. Actually, I was rejected. Not only did I not get the full amount, but I wasn't even allowed to discuss the loan. What do you mean by that? Even over the phone, I could hear the weight in Tom's voice. After I explained everything that had happened with Joseph from start to finish, Tom sighed deeply. It seems there was a mistake within the bank. I'll check immediately, but please wait there. Since Tom was my benefactor, I had no choice but to comply. I wanted to get back to tending to my herbs, but I decided to wait a little longer out of respect for Tom. Then, just 10 minutes later, an elderly man came rushing out of the bank. Mr. Daniel, please wait. I need to speak with you again. With a pale face, the man ran up to my truck, introduced himself as the bank president, and desperately clinged to me. I received a call from Mr. Tom, and I finally understand the situation. This was all due to my lack of oversight, and I cannot apologize enough. Please stand up. Anyway, the issue is that I was told a loan was impossible, right? At my response, the bank president vigorously shook his head. Chasing after him, Joseph appeared. President, are you okay? You suddenly ran out looking pale, and I was worried. How could I be okay? Do you even know who this gentleman is? The bank president's eyes flared with anger as he snapped at Joseph. But Joseph, with an inappropriate smile, said something outrageous. Oh, still lingering around. You must have stayed in the parking lot just to cause trouble. He frowned at me and then gave the president a sycophantic smile. I'll get rid of this poor man right now, please. Head back to the bank so you're not inconvenienced. You fool, you really haven't been listening at all. This man is not poor, and it is unacceptable to treat customers differently. Seeing the president's growing anger, Joseph was stunned, his eyes and mouth wide open. As he realized the president's fury was directed at him, he began to lose his composure. What do you mean, this poor, farmer? I don't understand why you're so angry. Mr. Daniel was introduced by Mr. Tom, the executive of Tom Corporation, one of our biggest clients. As the president revealed this, Joseph's face turned pale, and he started trembling. Tom was part of the family running my former company, and was expected to be the next CEO. Tom Corporation had a long-standing relationship with this bank. That's why Tom had gone out of his way to introduce me. I had informed you, Joseph, that Mr. Daniel would be coming for a loan consultation today, yet you rejected him. What were you thinking? Well, it seemed Joseph finally understood the gravity of the situation. His face turned pale, and he began to tremble. He glanced back and forth between me and the bank president with fearful eyes, and I thought he would finally apologize. Although his treatment of me had been harsh, I wanted to resolve the matter amicably, considering Tom's introduction. But Joseph didn't think so. Pride getting in his way, he glared at me with resentment and started muttering complaints. I deeply apologize, however. I must point out that this man drove here in a small truck. Joseph pouted and argued back, leaving both me and the president in stunned silence. Despite the warnings, what more could he say? Seeing our speechless reactions, Joseph seemed to believe he had convinced us with his words. Regaining some color in his cheeks, he began passionately defending his stance. No matter how important the client introducing him is, if the person can't repay the loan, the bank can't lend money. That's what I thought. Pointing alternately at my dirty work clothes and the small truck parked outside, Joseph continued proudly. Even with a major corporation's backing, we can't lend to a poor farmer. If we granted a loan just because of a connection, that would truly be changing our attitude based on who the person is. So, that's the judgment you made. The one who stopped Joseph's haughty speech was the bank president's calm voice. The president's unusually quiet demeanor, compared to his earlier anger, left Joseph speechless. But for us bankers, thoroughly investigating our clients' information is paramount. I thought I taught you that, Joseph. That's why I judged based on Daniel's clothes and the vehicle he drove. Persisting in his argument, Joseph finally faced the president's wrath. Don't be ridiculous. Anyone working at this bank should know this. Mr. Daniel is a major landowner who has been leasing land to us since his grandfather's time. Leasing land, so what he said earlier was true. Joseph's jaw dropped, and he began trembling as he stared at me. His reaction was so comical that I struggled to suppress my laughter. When my grandfather downsized his farming operations, he ended up with a lot of unused land. Not wanting to waste it, he leased it out to various parties, with the bank being the largest lessee. All the land surrounding the bank, the roads and the parking lots were leased from my grandfather. Now, I inherited the land and continued leasing it. Although I had to sell much of the land to pay inheritance taxes, I still own the land around the bank. That's why the president was now scolding Joseph with a pale face. Being introduced by Mr. Tom is reason enough. But more importantly, our bank has been indebted to his family for generations. How could you speak so rudely to Mr. Daniel? Confused by the president's reprimand, Joseph started making excuses, as if it was my fault. Utterly exasperated, I slowly opened my mouth to speak. Including that, I had prepared a business plan, but Joseph tore it up without even looking at it. Tore up a client's document. The president, who hadn't heard this part, became even more furious. Before the steaming mad president, Joseph turned pale and shrank, barely able to breathe. I didn't do such a thing. Mr. Daniel must be mistaken. There's no proof that I did it. There is proof. A young bank clerk spoke up, holding the trash can where Joseph had discarded the documents. Inside was my business plan, torn to pieces. I was surprised the loan discussion ended so quickly, so I decided to clean up the room. Then I found these important documents in the trash and brought them here. Don't meddle. Joseph, enraged, lunged at the young clerk. But before he could reach the young clerk, the president firmly grabbed Joseph's arm. Enough! Stop this disgraceful behavior, Joseph. You will face consequences. Until then, stay home on suspension. President, please believe me, I was just working hard for the bank's best interest. Joseph continued to make pathetic excuses, but they only highlighted his prejudice and misguided efforts. As other bank employees and security guards dragged him away, Joseph glared at me with hatred. No matter how much ancestral land you have or how influential your contacts are, you yourself are nothing. No matter how much we loan you, your farm will eventually fail. You needn't worry, my herb farm, Daniel's, is thriving and growing sales steadily. Calmly responding, Joseph gasped and stuttered. Herb farm? Do you mean the one that's a model for regional revitalization? Supported by the municipal government and highly sought after by city restaurants and local supermarkets. Oh, well, you knew about it. Then you should have read my business plan. If Joseph had bothered to read the documents, he would have realized who I was. I wasn't seeking a loan due to financial difficulties. On the contrary, I was planning to expand and needed additional funds to open a new farm in a highland area. My herb farm, as Joseph mentioned earlier, has been very successful. So, I plan to build a new farm in a neighboring state to grow a wider variety of herbs and produce them at different times of the year. Given that this plan spanned multiple regions and aimed at the future, I should have considered seeking a loan from a major city bank. However, I prioritized the local bank due to my family's long-standing relationship with them. And Tom's recommendation sealed the decision. But if the loan officer dislikes me this much, I have no choice. If this bank seems risky, I'll consider other banks. Please wait, Mr. Daniel. Ignoring Joseph, who stood there helplessly, the bank president clung to me. It's unfortunate for the president, who wasn't directly involved in the incident, but it's his responsibility to train his staff. Joseph looked down on me solely based on my appearance, thinking I seemed poor, regardless of my land ownership or connection with Tom. I couldn't trust a bank with such prejudiced employees. Ignoring the president, I got into my truck and gently pressed the accelerator. As I drove away, Joseph's miserable expression faded from view. Later, the local bank ended up collapsing. Apparently, some high school girls overheard my parting words that day. "Hey, did you hear that? This bank is risky. Really, it might go under. I need to withdraw my savings fast." Although it was a simple misunderstanding, the rumor that the bank is risky spread uncontrollably through the friends of those high school girls. The rumor spread to their parents and then to their parents' workplaces. The bank is risky. As a result, many people, unaware of the source of the rumor, believed the bank was in financial difficulty and rushed to withdraw their savings. This caused a run on the bank, which originally had no issues, leading to withdrawals of about $2 billion in a few days, causing the bank to collapse. The president and other employees managed to find jobs at other banks, but no one would hire Joseph. Rumors spread that Joseph was the cause of the collapse, earning him the nickname Joseph the Bank Breaker. After that, Joseph disappeared from town. There were various rumors about him being held responsible for the failed deal with me, being sued for damages, or borrowing money from unscrupulous lenders. But the only certainty was that I would never see Joseph's face again. On the other hand, I sought a loan from another bank and successfully secured it. I acquired land in a neighboring county and began constructing a new herb farm in the Highlands. My business continued to thrive, praised for its relaxing, green environment. We even opened a restaurant on the herb farm, serving dishes made with freshly harvested herbs and vegetables. Many people now visit not just for the herbs but for the food as well. We also sell herb bouquets, cookies, cakes, and herbal teas, attracting many families on weekends. The farm has become a place filled with greenery and smiles. As I watch the scene, I speak to my grandparents in my heart. "Grandpa, you are happy that I worked in a way that made people smile. I'll keep striving to be a grandson you can be proud of, so please keep watching over me." When I looked up at the clear blue sky, a gentle breeze rustled the herbs as if responding to me.